Hey everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, back with Spencer from Miller Ancients, and we're really excited because we've got some of the earliest coinage in the world in front of us, and Spencer recently bought it out of auction, and before he sells it himself, maybe some to me, maybe some to other auction houses or other sources, we're going to talk about it and learn all the history because it's so interesting. So thank you for being here, Spencer.
Thank you, Christian.
So my plan is to go from the left to right, and we'll start with this coin. The thing is, with the ancients, I'm learning so much here that I don't even know what I would call this. So can you explain? I think you mentioned the word Croesus, but I don't even know what that really means either.
Okay, so Croesus was the king of Lydia, a kingdom in Western Asia Minor, modern Turkey, in the mid 6th century BC. The production of coinage is thought to have begun in Lydia under Croesus's father or grandfather, Alyattes, who began to strike coins probably at the very end of the 7th century BC. This happened around the same time that the Greek city-states. I just want to note that the Lydian kingdom it's grouped in Greek coinage, but they actually were a little different than the Greeks. They spoke their own language, Lydian, which has since gone extinct, along with all the other languages of that region. But the Lydians began to strike coinage in the late 7th century BC, around the same time that the Greeks in Ionia, similar area, began to strike their own coinage. Croesus, though, was the first to do it on a really large scale. All of his types feature a lion and a bull butting heads, as you can see here. This is probably the highest graded example that I purchased of these four. Mm-hmm. This is a 6th stater, or hecti, and it's worth about $500. The siglos, which is the most common denomination, it's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Tends to get more towards 1,000. And then the coins of Croesus in gold, the staters, sell regularly for 6 figures.
Wow. What did you pay? I'll ask that, if you're comfortable sharing, just to get a sense of how you bought these.
Yeah, so I paid about $270 for this coin, which I was very pleased with. It's got good eye appeal. It has a nice even patina. And the 6th stater is still substantial enough that you could sort of feel that you're handling a coin that is big enough to appreciate. I bought some 12th staters, which you can see here in the middle, and while I still think they're beautiful coins, they're worth owning. They're good for business. They're a little small, but the 6th stater still is sort of it's nice in its simplicity.
Yeah, it's pleasing, and especially, it's a pretty thick coin, so
they all are
larger. And remind me, maybe you already addressed it and I missed it, but what's on the back here? Are these just like little punches?
Yeah, it's an incuse punch. All the coins of Croesus have them, and it was sort of an official version of a test cut, a way to show that the metal was pure. It was good metal. And one thing I found of Croesus is that despite the fact that it's some of the earliest coinage, the weight standard was incredible. For example, his, I think they're the 12th electrum staters. A crazy percentage of them, something like 40% of the specimens that come on the market, are exactly 1.17 grams.
Whoa.
Which, for something done 2,600 years ago, is really impressive.
Definitely. Well, I assume maybe we move on to the next of these hecties. Is there going to be, we'll find out if there's going to be a really large difference on them, but how long were these produced for again?
So Croesus was king for 15 years. He took over the throne of Lydia in 561 and ruled till 546. In his day, he was known as the richest man in the world. In fact, there's a saying, as rich as Croesus, which is a reference to him. And he was defeated by the ascendant Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. In fact, he went to go visit the oracle at Delphi, and he was given the prophecy that if you cross the river, basically if you go to make battle with the Persians, a great empire will fall. And he believed it to be the Persian Empire, but the oracle was actually talking about his own empire.
Oh, wow.
And his kingdom was subsequently, unfortunately for him, annexed. So
Smart for the oracle to not be specific, so
yeah,
somebody's going to go down.
If you're in the oracle business, ambiguity is definitely a good thing to have.
Yeah, no, but this one, a little rougher. I mean, it almost looks a little shinier in some sense. I probably prefer the eye appeal of the other one, but any commentary on how this one's different from the previous?
This one is definitely a little bit rougher. And in fact, I think there's a chance it might have been brushed. that might be why it's shinier. I mean, I definitely also prefer the first type, and the market does too. So while I paid $270 for that example, I think I only paid $150 for this one.
Okay.
And it still should sell well, but it doesn't have the eye appeal of the one I just showed.
Yeah, but a good example of, when you're collecting ancients, just like with the modern stuff, you can still get much more affordable coins if you're willing to take a little decrease in condition.
Yeah,
But
and one word of advice I would give to ancient collectors is I think this is a perfect example of, shininess isn't everything. Like if you want to show the coin, the first coin again, I mean, I just think it looks so much nicer, despite the fact it might have a little less luster. It's really clean, and it's got great eye appeal.
mm-hmm. Well, thanks for that, insider tip from an ancients dealer or expert or person who has knowledge about them. So, anyways, we'll move on to these. What is it? Is it a hemi-hecti, or how do you call it?
12th stater or hemi-hecti.
Oh, 12th stater. Makes sense.
12th stater is probably the more common way to talk about it, just because it's easier to use numerical fractions.
That's cool.
So these, it's the same design. I've sort of said everything about Croesus. But if you thought that this was the smallest denomination, you would be wrong. In fact, there is a 1/24th stater.
Whoa.
And if you thought that was the smallest denomination, there is in fact a 1/48th stater that is
No
about
way.
0.3 grams.
Wow.
Quite a tiny coin. In fact, I've handled a few while working at Heritage, and I'm not really interested in coins like that. I like my coins to be at least a gram. But.
Yeah. Now, in terms of commerce, do they not think to alloy it where it's a low percentage of silver, or were things so worthless that 0.3 grams of silver was enough of a unit, or did they have a copper counterpart so that they could avoid these 48th staters and instead have a copper small change variant, or what was the sort of economy, so to speak, with coins back then?
Yeah, so the ratio of silver to copper in the ancient world was pretty striking. Like in Rome, you'll see, I forget the exact ratio, but it's like a bunch of huge sestertii, which are 34 millimeters, 22 grams, are worth only one tiny Roman denarius. And in fact, Croesus struck no bronze coinage. So he needed to have a super small denomination like the 48th stater, that would serve as sort of something for everyday money, because even this 12th stater would have been a decent amount of money. I mean, no one really knows anything about prices of stuff in the Lydian kingdom the way we can make a rough estimate with Roman denarii and what one Roman denarius would have bought you in modern dollars. But just for me to give a rough estimate, I would probably say that even this 12th stater is probably the equivalent of a $50 bill.
Whoa, that's a fair amount. Now, $50 bill back then, what did you pay for these two, and how do you think the market would respond when you go to sell them?
These, I think, in this entire Roma purchase I made, or technically it's two purchases across two resales, these might have been the best. I think I bought both of these for, all told, under $100. Mm-hmm. And they've typically been selling for around $200 to $250. One of these is a little nicer than the other. So.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that sounds like a good pickup and really fun that we could get to video them before they go to the market. We've got two more coins here. Is this another one of the similar coin to what we just looked at? I'm going to take it out of here.
Yeah, I'd take it out. So it's not, and I think that this is a great segue from how coinage developed during the 6th century, which is such an important time for the development of coinage and the growth of certain styles. This is a diobel. About the same size as the 12th staters, but on a different denominational standard, of the city of Phokaia in Ionia. So this is really Greek. And as you can see, I bought this coin for eye appeal. It is a lovely archaic style head. Some people think archaic art is primitive when compared to later Greek classical and Hellenistic art. I disagree. I think it's really, something about it is really endearing. And these coins just really speak to me.
Definitely. So the diobel, is that like one, a half of an obol, basically? And what does an obol mean?
Two obols.
Okay, two obols.
Yeah.
And then how many obols to the, denomination I might...
So it's 4 obols would be in a dram.
Okay.
And then, obviously, 4 drams are in a tetradram.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, so this would be 1/8 of a tetradram.
1/16.
Okay.
Because it's Oh no, you're correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Cool.
thinking in terms of obols. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Value-wise, how does this compare to some of the 12th staters?
So it's worth less because coins of Croesus command a premium because it's the first major large-scale coinage. Not the first coinage. I want to be clear to say that there were coins struck before the Croesus types, but it's the first coinage struck on a really large scale. But this coin I think I picked up for around $50, and I'm actually thinking of holding on to it. That was a pretty good price, but I just like the eye appeal on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I really like how it's almost like a little saucer or something, like a UFO with the relief on that head. Yeah, the UFO coin. That sounds very like I know a lot about ancients. Ooh, these are cool. I think I once brokered a coin that looked a little bit like this. That's a bunch of grapes, right, on a grapevine.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can learn a little bit more about them. It looks worn. It looks like it's got a nice test cut in it, but it's also feels like a super old chunk of silver. So why is it the last coin in this video?
So this is of the later 5th century. This is a good segue from the diobol. So the diobol was struck in Western Asia Minor, which came under the jurisdiction of the Persian Empire, which stretched all the way to India, had its capital in Iran. And under the Persians, Asia Minor, which was under Persian rule but still sort of influenced by the Greeks a little bit, began to strike coinage, which was still sort of a Greek thing. The Persians didn't strike any coinage in their eastern territories. All their coinage was in their westernmost provinces in Asia Minor. And this is part of the series I call sort of like the Persian satraps coinage. Satrap means governor, and this was struck by the governor of Cilicia at the city of Soloi in the late 5th century. And these coins sometimes have Greek letters on them, but usually have letters in Aramaic, which was the official language of the Persian Empire. Of course, there were, many, many languages spoken, but the official language of administration, centralizing language, was Aramaic. This coin I don't think has any lettering on it because it's one of the earlier examples, but as the Persian satrap coinage developed in the 4th century, which is the sort of end of the Persian Empire, the styles become extremely ornate, and some of those coins sell for tens of thousands of dollars today.
Wow. No, this one, just as a closing comment, it looks a little, obviously it's more worn. Is that because it was really weakly struck, or has it just seen a ton of wear over time?
So one thing about these earlier Persian satrap coins, like the ones from the 5th century, is that they tend to have a pretty strong reverse strike. This is actually not one of the stronger ones I've seen, but it's still a decent strike.
Yeah.
And they have these unbelievably weak obverse strikes. You almost never see these with strong strikes on the obverse. And I'd actually say it's probably not a weak strike. It's more of a worn die.
Okay.
The Persian satraps in the 5th century, I guess, were pretty lazy about paying engravers to engrave a lot of obverse dies, so they just used the same ones until they were unusable. This is probably more at the unusable end of the spectrum. They shouldn't have struck coins with it, but...
Well, it shows some neat, not provenance, but provenance in the sense of, it was a different time of striking coins,
yeah.
So it's fun to have. Maybe value-wise, just to wrap things up, what are we thinking on this coin?
Under $100, okay. $75 to $100.
Nice, cool. Well, thank you so much. Any other closing comments on this super early, it's really, some of the earliest coins in the world here, so really fun to be able to feature them.
Yeah, it's a fun way to tell the story of the history of the period through the development of coinage.
Yeah, I wish we were trading this stuff. I bet it would be less practical, but in Pocket Change today, that would be pretty neat. Cool. All right, well, we'll see you back for some future videos.
Sounds good.
Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Treasure Town, and get in touch with me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Also, check out my website, treasuretowncoins.com, for news and updates related to the channel and collectibles in general. Lastly, there's a link tree in the description with links to all of my other sites, as well as some affiliate links that can support the channel. But with that being said, have a great day, and I'll hope to see you on some of my videos in the future.